You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 136, Four on the Floor. And coming to you from the fully boosted suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the wet suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Nor'easter Matola.
Oh, you're getting a nor'easter, huh?
Oh, yeah. Just like, it's supposedly going to be bad. Yep. Nor'easter time. Yeah. There were just like 90-mile-an-hour winds, localized flooding. I mean, I hope it won't be. I mean,
so do people outside of the Northeast know what a nor'easter is? Because for our international and non-New England,
probably not. I feel like it's one of those things where people are like, coffee, milk, what's that?
So a nor'easter is a low-pressure system that forms a storm and travels along the eastern coast of the United States. While the storms often affect the Northeast, the term nor'easter is derived from the fact that the winds around the low-pressure system blow from the Northeast. And usually it means a snowstorm too, but
well, that's what confused me because
sometimes it's rain-based, I guess.
Well, over the past week, like we were having summer-like temperatures, which I was hanging out with one of my friends and referencing when we did the episode where you talked about going to Fall Fest when it was 90 degrees. And I'm just like, yes. This kind of feels like that. Like we were doing fall stuff and it was like, I was like, I should have worn shorts today. Like I was like so hot. It was just a week ago. And now it's this kind of like, the temperature is like rapidly dropping. And all of a sudden it's just like, over the past couple of days, it's like rain. And now they're just like, yeah, high winds, pounding rain. And I'm a little nervous because my parents are still away. And about 10 years ago roughly around 10 years ago, we had something similar where they talked about flooding rains and it flooded their basement, which, my parents' house isn't prone to, that type of thing. They're not in an area.
Their basement's like, kind of like on that slope, so you would think it wouldn't flood. It's like my parents' basement has never flooded ever because there's a 50 to 100 foot drop off right behind their house, so for their basement to flood
exactly. Plus neither one of them lives near like water, the coast or anything like that. We're like for reference, we're inland. We're probably like an hour from any like from the coast well,
everybody's basement floods here because it's so flat, so you have to have a good sump pump system. And like after every like major storm, like we just had a gigantic storm, probably like the same storm you got, and afterwards you drive by people's houses and there's just rolled up carpet outside of everyone's house where their basement flooded. So I'm due. Ours flooded years ago, right after I set up my studio, and I had to go without a basement for a little while. So I've got a super advanced sump pump system all purchased. I just have to hire somebody to come in and install it properly because I don't want that happening again. That would be the end of the Deep Purple Podcast. So maybe I should use the Patreon money to hire a plumber, because if I don't do that soon and the basement floods, it's game over.
Well, we're in a very unusual area for basements to flood, but I still need to. My parents are still away, and I have to check on their house over the next couple of days because they, before they left, on vacation, they actually had gotten their flooring done in their basement. They had gotten the carpet taken out and like some vinyl flooring put in. So I would hate to see. I mean, there's nothing I could do except like start carrying shit out of the room like I did last time it happened. But what's more tragic was the last time that happened to them, they had recently redone the basement 10 years ago. And when it flooded, everything from like the carpet to the walls, like it was gutted. They had to gut the whole basement because if there was any water at all, it, molds would have developed. So it was just like they spent all this money, redoing the basement. And I want to say it was within a year of doing it. And then they had to redo it. So But I'm not telling them, I'm not calling them and telling them anything, because if they find out, then my dad is going to mercilessly harass me about how the house is doing. So I'm just going to pretend that
Every
nothing's
45
going
minutes,
on.
Johnny, just go by and check out the basement.
John, you check on the house? Hey, how's my house? Hey, hello. By the way, how's my house? Oh my goodness.
Looks like you're well. I got my booster shot on Friday.
Congrats.
Yeah, it
Congrats.
was perfectly timed. I had Saturday off, so I went Friday after work, got my shot. Felt terrible all day Saturday, and started feeling good enough just in time to go back to work on Sunday. So completely ruined my day off, but it's over. Fully boosted. It was not as bad as dose 2, but it was not a picnic. So
I'm actually due for mine as well. So, but I have to do the same thing as pick a, my symptoms for both shots were not as severe as some people's, luckily. So I have to pick a day where, I get it like you did after work, and then have a day off.
You had Pfizer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so everyone that has Pfizer is fine. Everyone that has Moderna is like, oh my God, I'm dying. And they're like, oh, good. It's like Moderna is like a little more effective. I'm like, yeah, I'd sacrifice some of the effectiveness because that kind of sucks. But I'm good with 97%. We don't need to go up to 99. This is fine. But anyway, yeah, that's over and done with. So until the next booster, who knows?
Congrats.
Yay.
All the same.
The kids are next. They just authorized.
Safe.
The doses are hitting. So in the next week or two, they might even announce that it's on for kids. So
wow. Well, yeah. I've met your kids, and God bless you after they get their boosters and whatever side effects they
I bet they won't have any. I bet they'll be like nothing happened to them. My wife was a little tired for a day, and that was it, because everyone's gonna get Pfizer. I'm the only sucker that got back when I got the shot. It was so early on. They didn't say which shot do you want. They were just like, sit down, boom, and they stuck it. And then you looked at your card. I was like, oh, Moderna, okay. Yeah,
that's pretty much what had. So I mean, I lucked out. I feel that I lucked out because there's a guy in a bright yellow vest just taking pictures outside my window. That's it's kind of creepy.
Maybe he's a fan of the show.
He's like,
I can't believe this is where they record it.
Is this where John from the Deep Rebel podcast? Rich probably sent him.
He's gonna mail you the picture and from your window from outside. Say, could you autograph this and send it back? Self-addressed stamped envelope. Oh man, it looks like you're coming to us from an Amazon warehouse. You just got Amazon boxes.
Yeah, I got my Amazon. But well, I mean, first of all, that's where I buy like everything, and second of all, the shelves are still empty back here. So yes, this is my little Amazon warehouse.
Your shelves are empty, just like all the stores, and you're ordering things from Amazon, just like stores are probably. They're like, we got nothing to put on the shelves. Order it from Amazon.
Well, like I had said the previous weeks, and I was talking to you about earlier, I am in the process of redoing this particular room, and it's taking a little bit longer because this big shelving system, which you mentioned, looks like it's built into the wall. Is actually freestanding, and I want to get rid of it, so I have to get rid of that, and I'm getting the flooring and painting done in here, and then just kind of redoing the whole setup, to kind of make it a little more like the rest of my vibe of the rest of my house, which is a little more minimal, a little more like like a, I don't know, a den or something, but a little less like a kind of a, I don't know, what would you call this? Like, it used to be the junk room before the show.
And now it's the showroom.
And now it's, but I mean, it's like, it's kind of it's kind of a little messy. I want to kind of do a little something cool with it. We'll see how it develops, but that's my latest project. So that's why it looks a little warehousey right now, little Amazon warehousey. So
funny. I was looking for it while you mentioned that, because I remember Peter Gardeau sent me we had that big talk about throw rugs on one of our episodes, and international listeners were like, what? Did we talk about this on the show? I can't remember.
I don't think
some
so.
International listeners reached out and were like, what is a throw rug? Or an area rug, maybe you mentioned. Maybe it was area that you said, area rug. Yeah. Somebody was like, what's an area rug? I was like, oh, it's like a small rug, but you just, it's not like wall-to-wall carpet. You just put it in the one area. So they're like, oh, you mean like a rug? I was like, I guess so. I was like, so, There's always like those international things that don't translate well that you never really thought about, because how often you talk about area rugs with anybody. And
Oh, I love
Peter
it.
Gardot sent like a flyer with some area rugs that were on sale. It was probably from the 70s. But I
Of course
can't
he
find
did.
it. I was looking for it right now, but anyway.
Of course he did.
Save it for if I find it, we'll save it for another episode. That's a real teaser for you. That'll get people tuning in for next time.
So speaking of the Amazon warehouse, I do
Yeah.
have a quick review that I wanted
Ooh.
to share. Some kind of a semi-regular segment here, but anyways, speaking of Amazon, I was on Amazon. I was looking for loungewear because essentially I've given up, and I don't want to take pride in my appearance anymore. No, but I was looking for like loungewear, like stuff that I could wear comfortably, like going out, because I'm just like, I'm over like I feel like I'm too young for this, but I'm just too old to be like, I'm over like wearing like jeans and getting dressed up every time I need to go somewhere, but I don't want to go into my pajamas either.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'll have some like, I know that there's like athleisure or athletic, sweatpants or like pants that you can wear that are more comfortable for when you're out and about during the day, but don't want to look like you're going to a club or something. So,
Sure.
so I'm like, all right. So I look up some Champion brand sweatpants, on Amazon, browsing around. So I'm like, oh, how are these? And I came across this review for Champion sweatpants, which I thought was very amusing. It's from the United States, from Steve. That's the
good old Steve.
The username, 3 stars. I mean, there, THERE. Okay. All right. So here is the review.
Oh, that was the title. I mean, they're okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay. They're okay.
They're spelled wrong. Okay. Okay.
Yes. I'm going to keep it real with you, G.
With you.
that hooked me in right away. These pants are trash, but not like trash to where I wouldn't recommend them. Just trash enough to where I wouldn't consider them Champion. They feel unremarkably thin that I think my boxers alone have more fabric. Hashtag in my Calvins. These aren't who hashtags in an Amazon review. It doesn't go anywhere.
That's how Steve rolls.
These aren't your going out with friends type of joggers, or you're trying to impress the ladies with my name brand pants. They're more of the someone rang the doorbell and I'm naked, so let me put something on right quick. The end.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. He's like, he calls them trash in the first line, but they get 3 stars. I mean, I guess he said they're not the worst, but
well, they're not the worst. Basically, he's saying that they're good enough to throw on if you're like, around the house, or if you're answering the door right quick. But they're not good enough for like, the purpose which I wanted to buy them for, which is if you're just going out during the day, but you don't want to wear jeans, but you also have more self-respect than going out in pajama pants.
Makes sense. I'm guessing from the review that I'm significantly older than Steve, and it's been a long time since I tried to impress any ladies. I don't think I've ever tried to impress a lady, period, because I know I would fail. But if I was going to impress a lady, I don't think it would be like, well, check out my name brand pants. Like, what are you gonna do? Like pull back the back and show the tag? Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe,
well, I mean, I think that some people
I'm the wrong guy to really be going to, I guess, with this.
Well, I think that younger people that wear like athletic wear or whatever, they'll have like, Adidas or Champion or Nike, like on the side of those pants, and then
athletic,
like like the logo going across it or whatever. So I think that's probably what he meant by that. But is it not just like, hey, check out my hashtag Calvins, and then he lifts up the back and shows them like the tag, like, on his waist or what? I mean,
well, the Calvins reference makes me think he actually is older than he comes across, because that's like, nobody says that
in my Calvins.
That's from like the 80s. But may I recommend Roots? It's a Canadian brand. I've got the matching hoodie, and well, you can't see my pants. I got the matching hoodie and pants. Great look. A fully matching one piece
beautiful
sweatsuit. But Roots it's Canadian brand. My wife's Canadian, so she when every time we go up to Canada, we end up stopping by the store and buying stuff. But these things are like indestructible. They're super like heavyweight. they don't like start ripping or tearing. I've had this one for years. It still looks like the day I bought it. Really, really good material. They're not cheap, but you get what you pay for. Roots, a new sponsor for the Deep Purple podcast. Check them out. Right. We'll be getting fat residual checks from them now. But enough with residuals. It's time to move on to the meat of the episode. Well, actually, but before we do that, if you want to support the episode or the show, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can buy merch at our Etsy stores. We have mugs and shirts available, or you can become a patron on Patreon or donate on PayPal. Some people have been moving over to PayPal because Patreon has been increasing their sales tax and stuff like that. So PayPal takes a little chunk too, but they don't take it from the sender, they take it from us. So if you're looking to not increase your spending, you could go to PayPal, and the donation will be taken off at your end. Like unfortunately, it's a pretty big it's not bad, but like if you're on the $1 tier, they're taking a pretty big chunk of that dollar. But if you're like at the $5 or something, it's not quite as big a percentage. So yeah, you can check that out. Either one of those ways is a great way to support the show. And speaking of which, heyo, we've got a new patron coming in at the $1 made up name tier. We have Ashen Lionel. So Ashen, if that is your real name, it is not, says, well, I asked him about supporting the show. He said, just a spur of the moment thing to add you to my Patreon tippies. Been listening and enjoying several of the album run throughs since Randy California gig dropped. If this reaches you in time, you could use my goth sounding anagram alter ego of Ashen Lionel. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Looking forward to more Gillan and Whitesnake. And he sent that, I think, on Sunday, right before our Gillan episode dropped. So,
so he did look forward to more Gillan.
I said, just for you. We just convened and did an emergency episode just for you that we recorded a month ago. So anyway, thank you, Ashton. Welcome to the Patreon ranks. We really appreciate your support of the show. And then, of course, we'd be remiss if we did not thank our executive level patrons coming in at the 10-pound tier. Dr. Jill Brees at the turn it up to $11 tier. We have Clay Wambacher, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and Mikkel Sheen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, Ryan M., Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, and Victor Campos. Thank you so much to all of you for your generous donation to the Deep Purple podcast. Now, we've got their patron updates segment, and this segment I like to call Postcards from the Edge of Maine. And this one comes to us. Yeah, John already has figured it out, I'm sure. This one comes to us from Bahaba, Maine. That is from, of course, Peter Gardeau. It was addressed to Roger Glover at this address. So when I got this in the mail, I saw Roger Glover. I'm like, oh my God, did Roger Glover send me a postcard? Thought it was probably highly unlikely. But it's addressed to Roger Glover because the running gag, if you are a new listener, is that I used to have a lot of mail addressed to Roger Glover at my old house. So I could sign up for Columbia House and BMG Records like 25 times. So it says, Roger/Nate. No lobster up here in the woods of Maine. No dirty grinders either. Thanks for the 2-year shout out of the Deep Purple concert today. That was the 2-year anniversary of when you and he attended the concert. Yeah. As I write this, You Fool No One is playing on the deep tracks. Butters, Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Oh, that's great.
Always nice. I don't know how long he's been sitting on this this postcard. It's probably from like the 70s.
I mean, I don't know. I think,
do they even make postcards anymore?
I think Peter's a magician is what I think, because he just like, you say a topic and he'll just reach into his bag of tricks and like, pull out anything.
Well, we first discovered on the show, you mentioned something on the show, then he'd send you something in the mail or he'd email you a picture or something. And then we had the live streams and he's on the live stream pulling it out in the moment. Like you mentioned something and he's like, oh, here's the German flag. Where does he get?
I feel like he might be lying. I think he has this stuff cataloged and he's not telling us. It's like down here and he's just like,
he's got this really elaborate file system.
Yeah, exactly.
Could very well be. Feels like my camera went blurry.
Yeah, you are a little fuzzy. I think it's when you held up.
I ruined it with the postcard. Maybe if I pull it back. Am I still blurry?
No, you're good. Crystal clear.
Peter, your postcard broke our system. Okay, so here we go. This week we are talking about Four on the Floor. So this is a very interesting album. You can see the album behind me over there. And I guess it was, well, not first, but this album came out in the late 70s. And then there was a release on one of our favorites, the Connoisseur collection, that came out in 1990, which featured tracks. Well, I won't say tracks from it, featured all the tracks on it. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But this is kind of a hidden gem. So this started with Al Kooper and Jeff Baxter. So you familiar with both of those gentlemen, correct? Moderately. So Al Kooper of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, solo productions, Cooper Bloom, that Al Kooper Mike Bloomfield album that I've got over here somewhere. So I was really familiar with Al Kooper growing up because my dad was a big fan and had that Bloomfield album. He had the Blood, Sweat, and Tears album. He had a bunch of stuff. He has that album, Act Like Nothing's Wrong, with it's like the lady, like the naked lady's body with his head on it, and then on the back of it, it's the lady's head on his body. It's a great album. Like it's an eye-catching album, obviously. And I think I bought it when I was with you at the place whose name I always forget in Warwick on Route 6.
What, Sam's?
Sam's, yeah. We were in Sam's, and I was a big fan of his stuff with Blood, Sweat, and Tears and stuff. And I came across that album and I said, I gotta check this out. It's a great album, great solo album. But it kind of jumped out at me first before I even knew who it was. And I saw Al Kooper and I was sold. He also did production with Lynyrd Skynyrd, and he was almost a guitarist for Deep Purple when Randy California stepped in. He was the first choice, and I remember reading about it in might have been one of Jerry Bloom's books, where he talks about like how he was getting ready to rehearse with Deep Purple, and he was kind of arguing with them. He's like, why do you want me to do this? I'm not even really a guitar player, because he's more like an organ key guy. I mean, he can play guitar, obviously, but he's just like, I don't know if I'm the guy to do this. And then I think he had like a breakdown, and that's when they went with Randy California, which obviously worked out pretty well. So he's got a little bit of connections there to the group. So yeah, that's kind of my background with Al Kooper. Jeff Skunk Baxter, of course, worked extensively with Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the Doobie Brothers, and yeah, he's a really, really good guitarist. I really like his style. Like his guitar solos are always like very interesting. He's not just like doing like standard like blues stuff or whatever, but great guy. Most recently, though, he's been working as a missile defense consultant, and he worked with on NASA's advisory board, which is kind of an odd turn. I think I read somewhere like one of his neighbors was some sort of like rocket scientist or something, and gave him some books, and he started reading, and then all of a sudden now he's like a leading expert on missile defense. Very, very strange. So in this Connoisseur collection, which the same collection that did like Cher Kazoo and did Butterfly Ball, kind of has that same kind of look to it. In this booklet here, which you'll have to forgive me, is the print on this is so small. And actually Jeff Bryce had sent me a scan of his, or a picture of his, which I could read better before this one came in. I wasn't sure if this was going to arrive in time, but some of it's like white writing on like a light tan background. You can like barely read it. But Simon Robinson says that basically this album, the one that you see behind me, was a friend of his was at HMV in Manchester, and there was a sticker on the cover of the album that said vocals by Glenn Hughes. So his friend picked it up and thought, oh, this is going to be great. Got it home, did not think it was great, and then gave it to Simon. Said, hey, you might like this because it has Glenn Hughes on it. But Simon writes in that he wonders like how did they know Glenn Hughes was on it? Because as we'll get into, he's not credited on the album. There's no credit for Glenn Hughes. So he wonders how the people at HMV knew he was on it and knew to put that sticker on it. So this started in 1978. Al Kooper began working with a group which was going to be named the Hollywood Horns. Richie Hayward of Little Feat was going to be on drums, and Jeff Baxter on guitar. Elliot Randall was going to be playing guitar too. And then they brought in Glenn Hughes to do vocals. So it was, a band. Hayward ended up getting injured in a bike crash 3 weeks before going to the studio, and they had to replace him with studio musicians. So the project kind of fell apart there. There was music written by Kooper, Hayward, and Baxter that was never recorded, but they did some cover songs, and Casablanca, who is the label behind it, they bankrolled it and they decided, hey, we're gonna clean up some of these tapes and release them because we put some money into this and we want to get some money back. So Hughes said he was not happy with how this was handled. He was thinking, I'm assuming he was thinking at this point, this is a band, we're going to be doing original stuff. Hughes isn't like he'll do covers here and there, but he's not a huge cover guy. So I think he was probably just disenchanted with the whole thing and just said, take my main name off it. I don't want to be involved, even though he's obviously the vocalist we're about to hear. So there wasn't a huge release since his name came off the album, and then it kind of fell into obscurity and was hard to find. I somehow came across this promo copy of it. I can't even remember when, a while back, but it says not for resale, promotional use only. So somebody betrayed that trust and sold it to me or sold it to the person who sold it to me. I don't know. So there you have it. That's kind of what happened. It's just another one of these kind of weird, random one-off albums. And full disclosure, I got this. This came to my attention a few years ago, and I think it might have been after we did our Play Me Out episode, because somebody contacted me for the first time and said, "Have you ever heard of this?" And I was kind of intrigued because this is Play Me Out with, instead of the bonus tracks on the version that I have, which came out a few years later, this just shoehorns in the 4 tracks from this album. Thinking that they'd make a good counterpart. And actually our friend Mike Erickson, if I can read this tiny rant, it says, album assembled with the cooperation and assistance of Glenn Hughes, for whom my thanks. Okay. Produced with the aid of material from the Deep Purple Appreciation Society archives. The DPS can be found at P.O. Box blah blah blah. Many thanks to Mark Stratford at Connoisseur, and also Mike Erickson, our good friend. So Mike Erickson was involved in this. I don't know if that's more of the Play Me Out stuff, but there you go. That's the little background on that album. So who's on this album? Of course, we talked about Al Cooper. We talked about Jeff Baxter. There's also Dominic Frontier, who from New Haven, Connecticut. There you go. The neighbor of Peter Gardeau's, perhaps. He was an American composer, arranger, and jazz accordionist. He's known for composing the theme of much of the music for the first season of the television series The Outer Limits. So that's kind of random. I love this one. Backing vocals, Roland vocoder. So the first thing I saw, I was like, oh, that's weird. That's a weird name. And I was like, oh, of course, it's just the brand Roland made of vocoder, and they use that for. So we're gonna probably hear some like electronic backing vocals that maybe Glenn's voice passed through. But so I clicked on it. Obviously, this is the only entry in Discogs for Roland vocoder.
It's a great name.
It sounds like it could be a name. I want to hear Roland vocoder on lead vocals. Bass Neil Stubenhouse, this incredible studio bassist, 700 plus entries on Discogs, worked with Birds of a Feather, Blood, Sweat and Tears, and David Clayton Thomas. So there's another Blood, Sweat and Tears connection. Drums, K Sudaclap, only entry on this. So so when you see something like that, you're like, is that a fake name? Who knows? I saw some other references to that name, but I get that there's a joke going on with that name. But if somebody knows what it is, let us know, because I can't figure it out. Also on drums, Rick Schlosser, another American studio musician, worked with Van Morrison, Rod Stewart, and Sean Cassidy. And then drums in absentia, Ritchie Hayward, American drummer. So he dropped out of art school in the mid-'60s, moved to California. He joined the Fraternity of Man in the Factory, played with Tom Waits, Robert Plant, Little Feat, and passed away, sadly, in 2010. Guitar, Rip Tup. Again, only entry. So I'm like, is that another made up? Like, is everyone going uncredited on this? I don't know.
Ripped Up. I love it.
Ripped Up. Oh yeah, Ripped Up. I'm an idiot. Ripped it. Yeah, so I don't know where this album is. Like, nobody wants credit for it, I guess. Lead vocals, of course, Glenn Hughes, uncredited. He's not on the album behind me over there. Percussion, Bobby LeKind, who worked with the Doobie Brothers, Little Feat, Michael McDonald. So you're starting to see some of that yacht rock connection with Jeff Baxter. On percussion, Paulino da Costa. So this is a Brazilian percussionist. He worked with Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson. He was on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. So now you're starting to get to see where some of this, where we're headed here with the music. Synthesizer, Steve Adore, and again, the only entry on Discogs. And then that's it. On the technical, you got Al Cooper and Jeff Baxter producing with the engineer Bob Edwards, who worked on that Al Cooper album, Act Like Nothing's Wrong, like I told you about, and also ended up working at Skywalker Sound, so probably doing a lot of movie engineering. And he also worked with Sly and the Family Stone, so some more disco coming at you. So you go. That's the kind of background of all the different various credits on this album, and that takes us to the artwork. John, what do you think about this artwork? Let me just share it a second time with you. Here we go.
Now I remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. What year was this album again?
79 as best I can tell.
Okay, yeah. So it's I was gonna say this looks very late 70s. And actually it's the first, I mean, I've seen it before. I haven't paid much attention to it. And this is the first time that I noticed that she is like hanging on to the thing for a bass drum.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I'd never really noticed before. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting, definitely late 70s looking cover. I like it. I like kind of the white and silver, and then that little pop of red in there, like visually. I think it's actually a really good cover.
So it's almost like she's pole dancing on the beater for a kick drum, but the head of the kick drum is like a stick shift for a car. You can see the 2 and the 4, like the gears.
Yeah. I thought she was holding a bowling ball at first.
It's like she's caressing a bowling ball,
which is really random,
but she's a kind of dressed like a 50s pinup.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because like a lot of the there was a lot of stuff in the late 70s about like the nostalgia for the 50s, which I mean doesn't seem weird now because it's like I feel like whenever there's a generation, they're always nostalgic or stuff comes back from 20 to 30 years earlier. So that kind of makes sense. But I thought it was kind of a really cool aesthetic for the late 70s, kind of mixing that like kind of disco gloss type of thing with like 50s greasers and, Betties and stuff like that, whatever they called them back in the 50s, chicks, Betties.
So the font or the logo too, 4 on the floor, has like tailpipes embedded in it.
Okay, I just noticed that too. That's pretty
cool. That car and drum dual meaning, which is interesting because Robinson says in the liner notes here, he says he speculates the title 4 on the floor is that where there were 4 tracks left on the floor. So basically they did this project, they were going to do originals, they did these 4 tracks and then they just left them behind, so they found like 4 on the floor. So it's kind of got a triple meaning. He never mentions anything about, he talks also about kind of manual shift 4 on the floor, being called 4 on the floor outside of Europe, like because there's 4 gears in the gearbox. But he never mentions the 4 on the floor like being the drum beat, like the 4/4 time electronic pop disco music sort of thing. So it's almost got like a triple meaning to it. So it's kind of clever for given the material that they have.
Right, because in music that's usually that term is used for a rhythm pattern used in disco and dance music and stuff like that. Yeah, right. It's
basically just chord notes. Boom, boom, boom. That 4 on the floor, right?
Right.
Usually for this style of music that I'm assuming that we're about to hear. And that leads us to the next point. Full disclosure, while I think I started to say it earlier, I don't think I finished, is that I got this album right when I heard about it, but I never listened to it because we were doing the show. And it was a couple years ago. And I said, well, I'm going to save it for the episode. So I have never heard these tracks. I'm suspecting, based on my talking around, that most of our listeners have probably not heard a lot of these tracks. Some of them have for sure. But this is definitely a reach, kind of an obscure project, that so obscure that Glenn Hughes doesn't even put his name on it. My guess is it won't take very long to realize it's Glenn Hughes singing because it's Glenn Hughes. But
I mean, I've heard about it before because, like you said, with the CD that you got, is that I heard it like even back when we first were into collecting all this stuff, is that this was packaged together with Play Me Out. Like I would see like in catalogs or whatever, like Play Me Out / Four on the Floor. So I used to think it was like the name of the album. I thought the Play Me Out album was called Play Me Out Four on the Floor.
Yep.
And then I realized, oh, it's like one of those two separate things, like the Butterfly Ball and the Wizards Convention.
Yep. Yep.
Which I used to think was the same thing too, until it was like, oh, it's one of those two things on one package. So, but I don't know, like at this point, if I've heard this before or if I haven't heard this. So I'll probably know once we start listening. But
yeah, it was the kind of like we've talked about on the show before, early days of CD. You're going to release an album on CD and you say, well, we can fit a bunch more stuff on here, so let's just cram some more stuff in. And that's what they did, which is cool because it made for some really good collections of stuff that otherwise they would not have. I mean, it was really great. They didn't have, people I think would have probably bought just as many copies of this if it was just Play Me Out. But Simon Robinson put together such great packaging and information and going through the music, and he did such an amazing work with all of the stuff that he put out, that he said, no, let's get some of this stuff out there, get this music out there, let more people hear it. So some people like the way that I kind of grew up listening to Play Me Out with those bonus tracks right after it. Some people probably are used to this just being that one album, like you said, like they're used to this going straight into Four on the Floor. So maybe it's more people than we realize that have heard this, but my copy was just a little bit after this one, so I missed out on the Four on the Floor part, which, by the way, got to go to the next part, which is the back of the album is the same lady. And then it's got the California driver's licenses for Jeff Baxter, Al Cooper, and Robert Edwards, who's was the engineer.
They all look like mug shots.
They all do look like mug shots. It's funny. They all have like addresses. I'm hoping those aren't their actual addresses, but they say 1980, 1982, and 1980. Oh, that's the expiration date on there. Right. They would have expired in the early 80s. But it's interesting. There is like there's a big noticeable gap in there where they could have had Glenn Hughes's license, but they probably had it at one designed and decided to go without it. But that's just my interpretation. It does say the cover illustration. Actually, I didn't have this information. I didn't realize to even check the album, but it does say cover illustration by Fred Nelson, logo concept Vicki Lee Johnson. So there might be some heavy hitters there. I
really like the back cover, but I mean, I've always been a fan of the the red and white thing.
I mean, the whole packaging of the whole thing is great.
And the license idea is really, I really like that, kind of along the lines of like when they would take like, albums that had like the kind of like scattered photo album pictures, like all kind of like looked like they were like tossed around like a collage type thing. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, I really like that. Good packaging.
So you see right there, Roland vocoder. So there you go. All right. So here we go. That is the album right there. What else we got? That's the Connoisseur Collection version that we talked about. And there you have it. Four on the Floor. So before we get into some of these tracks, we of course have to thank our core level patrons. Coming in at the $7.77 Keep It Warm Rat tier, Michael Vader. At the episode $6.66 tier, Steve Coldwell, Arthur Smith, Anton Glaving, and Richard Fusey. At the $6.65 Almost Evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 The Nice Price tier, Fielding Fowler. At the $5 Moneylender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Elman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, Will Porter, Swapper the Electric Alchemist, and Tim Southern Cross Johnson. Okay, so this album starts with side one, has 3 tracks. There Goes My Baby, Gypsy Woman, and Any Day Now. And side 2 is 1 track, but it's a medley of 4 Rolling Stones songs. So it's called the Glimmer Twins Medley.
It's pretty neat.
Let's Spend the Night Together, Lady Jane, Paint It Black, and Under My Thumb.
I've definitely heard that because I absolutely remember that one. So
You
I
remember
know
that one?
yes, I know I've heard that. Well, I mean, the Glimmer Twins remix, you have like, a disco version medley of like Rolling Stones song. I mean, that's kind of kind of hard to forget. So I've definitely heard this album. It's been a while then.
So this, so There Goes My Baby, written by Benjamin Nelson, George Treadwell, and Lover Patterson. So this is I guess this would be a Drifter song. I'm not sure. My ignorance on these songs is gonna show through on this episode. So I know it's Lover Patterson from he was the road manager for the Drifters. So maybe a song by them. I'm not sure. It doesn't really say on the jacket here. So here we go. Let's kick it off. The opening track. There Goes My Baby. In case you were wondering if it was disco.
Really? This is disco? This is what you call disco?
How's that screen share working for you?
Oh yeah, I see the cover.
Good.
Looking good.
Not Glenn Hughes on bass.
Oh well.
This is Roland vocoder. Sounds more like it was recorded in the 90s than in the 70s.
Right? Well, I mean, love it or hate it. I mean, the production on like a lot of the late 70s disco songs was very slick. Mm-hmm. It was good. A lot of it was high quality. So, I mean, yeah, this sounds really, really good. And I mean, Hughes's voice is definitely suited to this.
Oh yeah. It makes you wonder why he didn't do more stuff like this.
I mean, think about how diverse he is. I mean, he could do stuff like from like this to Sabbath to the Dead Daisies to
yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of
like
styles.
Like that lounge style he was doing on Wizards Convention. Like he's all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, his voice is really distinct, but I mean, it's also it's really diverse when you think about it.
Roland vocoder doing some work in the background there.
You love that.
It's great.
Go Roland.
I keep hoping it's gonna be like Dealer and they just break into a different part and Roland vocoder gets a lead vocal.
Suddenly I have an urge to wear something besides sweatpants.
Like a white leisure suit?
Yeah. Oh, how did you guess? With big lapels and a black shirt unbuttoned to the navel. Off my hair and brush it straight back. Hey, watch the hair.
I spend a lot of time on my hair and you hit it. You hit my hair.
He hits my hair. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. I gotta
The last time I watched it was with you. but I quote I if you ask Jen, I probably quote that hair thing, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week. I think she's over it by now. Ooh, listen to synth solo.
That's something you don't. That's something you don't typically get in a disco song is like a solo.
These tracks are a little longer. This is a 5-minute song. medley on the second side is obviously quite long. I love that, like, this is the era where they're really straddling how silly the synth can sound.
It is pretty silly sounding.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I don't mean that as a bad thing, but it's a little silly. When you talk about that 4 on the floor beat, I mean this is it. Like, you can't, I mean, how do you not bounce, whether you like it or not, how do you not kind of bebop along to this?
I'm bebopping.
All right, there you have it. Our first track. There Goes My Baby. Let me do a little there. I should have done this during the song. There Goes My Baby. Oh, Donna Summer does a version of it.
Oh.
Yep, the Drifters do a version.
Well, that makes sense.
So, yep, not surprising. And Fred Nelson, the illustration, the artist for the illustrations, only had a few other entries on Discogs. He did a Lawrence Welk album cover, a band called Zazu, something called The Magic Organ, which sounds like a kid's show. Or maybe something dirty. Depending. Okay. So we're gonna rank it. How are we gonna rank There Goes My Baby?
There Goes My Baby. I would give it a 3.5. I think it's enjoyable. Like you said, we were bebopping along to it. I think it was nothing special about it other than it was like Glenn Hughes on like a bona fide, like undeniable disco song. Like this wasn't like disco style. Like this was like down and out disco.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, it's like it's toying with being disco. It's full on.
Yeah.
No apologies, which is cool.
Yeah, but I mean, other than Glenn being on it, I mean, you could throw it in a pile of disco songs and it's like indistinguishable. I mean, it's but it's definitely, like you said, catchy. I liked it. It's pretty good.
All right, I will say exactly the same, 3.5. You know, I felt like having it on, and whether it was in the background or what, you just kind of like, you're grooving along to it a little bit. It's disco for those diehard people who hate disco. You probably hate it. But for me, I was never like like I'm going to seek out disco, but to me it was always just something that usually had pretty funky slap bass in it, which I always liked. And I think the part where maybe disco loses me a little bit is it's usually more like of an electronic or just very straight drumming. There's not as much groove to it, so it loses me a little bit there. But it's usually excellent vocals and excellent bass playing and some kind of funky guitar if it's there, maybe a silly sounding synth. And this kind of checks all the boxes. It's enjoyable. I find it a hard song to listen to and feel like I feel like if I was sad and I put that song on, I would just have to not be sad anymore, because like it's just it's fun. It bebops around. I mean, what's not to like, except if you hate disco. All right, next track up is a track that sounds like it could be on any of the Deep Purple extended family albums. It's called Gypsy Woman. Sounds very like
very Coverdale.
Could be a Gillan track. It could be Coverdale. It could be Deep Purple. I don't know if Hughes was as into gypsies as a Rainbow. Very easily could be. Okay, so yeah, so this song, Gypsy Woman, is a Curtis Mayfield song. So here we go, Gypsy Woman. Clavinet in there, can't go wrong with that.
I love it already.
That's a great disco trick.
Yep. They're pulling out all the tricks.
A lot of
I that's the thing. I love the bass slaps and the bass pops and playing on the octaves in disco music. I think you're right about that. It's like one of the best things about disco music is just like the bass playing. It's like,
Sure.
It's not even virtuosic. It's just like, it's just catchy all the time. Like you do the same thing. See, that descending like octave bass line, always awesome. How could you not go like this?
Yeah, it's always just ascending chromatically or descending chromatically. And it's really hard when you get that slap bass and the clavinet. It's hard to discern which is which because they've got such a similar attack to them.
Do you hear the vibra slap in there?
I didn't hear it. It'll hopefully come back. Oh yeah, there it goes.
It's just in the background.
A little harp there. Glenn's voice could be a little higher in the mix for my liking though.
Yeah. I mean, if he wanted to pivot and had like a disco career, he could have done it.
Right. Unfortunately, like late 70s, early 80s, he was pretty much out of the scene altogether. This is
right.
He doesn't have a lot of material out of that time. He had his battles he was dealing with, so. But had but like you said, had he wanted to, he could have killed it.
Oh yeah, like I mean,
he was wearing the right on California Jam. He was already dressed like disco then. You know, he could have just brought that outfit back, and he could have been a sensation.
Yeah, I mean, if he had his wits about him, and he was like, you know, was a little more active in the late 70s, he could have totally, like, if he wanted to, he could have been like, you know what, I'm gonna leave rock behind for a while and have a disco career, and he would have been like Donna Summer, Yvonne Elliman, Glenn Hughes.
That would be great.
A little bit of a
Baxter for you.
A little bit of a bluesy solo in there.
This might be the closest that any of the Deep Purple family gets to yacht rock. They're really dipping his. It's not yacht rock. It's obviously disco, but dipping the toes with all of those major yacht rock players here. I could just imagine, like, if it had gone this direction, like seeing like Glenn Hughes and Michael McDonald like performing together. That'd be awesome.
You know what? Hearing this chorus, it's really familiar to me. So I've definitely heard this song before. It's definitely stuck out to me.
Maybe you've heard the Curtis Mayfield version. Because I've got to say, other than obviously the Rolling Stone songs, I don't know that I'm familiar with the originals of any of these.
No, I'm pretty sure that I've heard the Glenn Hughes version of this version of Gypsy Woman. I mean, I could have heard the Curtis Mayfield one too, but I remember it being super funky. It was on one of those
weird compilations that you had. Like, you had a lot of those that I didn't have, which was just like the Deep Purple Family Tree or whatever.
I love the really clean twang of that guitar.
Yeah, it's super, super trebly.
They're pulling out like all the stops. They got like clavinet, horn section, vibra slap, like friggin' bass slaps. Like
you've got the guitar frozen in the neck pickup position.
Right, they're just like they put like an APB out and like all right, everybody, all disco, like we need to report to Studio 3, everything disco that you can bring here.
Emergency!
Get it to this studio now.
And somebody's like, hey, maybe we leave out the vibra slap. You shut your mouth. We need to do everything that we can to make this a disco song. We don't want there to be any ambiguity.
Yeah, we don't want any questions as to if this is a disco song or not.
And if this is a standard like Glenn Hughes, one take. He was probably in the studio for one day. He can knock out a performance like this. You could wake him up in the middle of the night and say, "We need you to do this," and he would just even now you just bang it out. He might even sound better now. There he goes.
Woo! the drummer right in that cymbal.
That bell.
I like the bass.
And Neil Steubenhaus is really earning his pay on this one. Fantastic. And with all the studio guys they had on this, I'm sure this was like nothing to them to knock out these songs. And probably, like I said, it was probably they were in the studio for a few days max, and that was it. But I gotta say, we're recording an uncharacteristic early morning episode, and this is really, I feel like I'm starting my day on. I feel like I'm just gonna be walking into work later tonight, just like grooving along, like, oh yeah.
He's gonna be wearing his bell bottoms.
I'm gonna walk into work with a big high-heeled collar,
high-heeled boots,
big tight belt buckle,
platform shoes, like hip huggers.
Oh boy! So what do you think about Gypsy Woman?
Well, as you could tell, I really enjoyed that, so I'm giving it a 4 because it had every disco cliche in it possible, and I loved it. I don't care who knows. Come on, it was great. It was really catchy, you know, and I really like the chorus too. I mean, I know that it's a cover, but he's like, when it kind of goes up that half step when he goes Gypsy Woman, he goes Gypsy Woman, and everything goes up. It's like half step. I love that.
Yeah, it's
super catchy, super catchy.
Good stuff for sure. No, my goodness, I forgot to rank Gypsy Woman here. So of course, this might get me some scorn, but I will also give Gypsy Woman a 4 because it's just fun. I think that's the thing about disco, and I think maybe like the rockers at the time, like for us, we grew up. We were, you know, very wee when disco was at its peak. And not really on the scene. But I think for so many rockers at the time took disco as kind of the same way that honestly that our generation took grunge, which was as this like threat to everything that they held sacred. And in reality, it doesn't mean you don't have to like it, but you don't have to feel like threatened by it. Like, oh my God, like I can't like my music now because this new music that I don't like is on the scene. And so for us, like growing up, disco was kind of like funny and like a punchline and stuff like that. So it was a very different experience. And I think the fun of it is what kind of always attracted me. I never really sat there and just listened to disco records, but whenever I hear a disco song, I'm usually just kind of like, yeah, this kind of fun. It bebops around. It's it's a good time.
Well, I mean, especially at this point, I mean, it's probably like, you know, when we say 45, like even about 40 50 ish years, you know, since disco was around or first, you know, hit the scene or whatever. But it's like, when we were in our teens, it was probably like, you know, when it was kind of making a like resurgence, you know, it was probably about like 15 to 20 years out. So there's that, you know, retro period or whatever. When we saw it, it's just like the music and like the clothes of the time were like seemed so dated and therefore goofy, because I mean, it's like all the, you know, like we were saying before, the huge bell bottoms and the butterfly collar shirts and the really colorful patterns. Like, I mean, at the time when, you know, when everything was all like plaid and, you know, baggy jeans and depressing and everything, it could have been any more different. Right. You know, and same thing with the 80s styles now with the coiffed hair and like, you know, the tight jeans and the cut off t-shirts and everything. Like, you know, you could look at any generation from then and, you know, be like, oh, something's goofy, but that was like the soundtrack to the style. You know, it's like you almost, you know, associate the music with like the, you know, the style at the time. And you know, that's what made it really funny. But I mean, it's like, you know, when I hear that kind of stuff now, like if you go out to, you know, a club and you hear or a bar and you hear like a really good DJ kind of throwing a bunch of stuff into a mix and you start, you know, hearing a bunch of stuff like this. I mean, it's like, it's a good time. And I think everybody these days just kind of enjoys everything.
Yeah. And you know, you're starting to see kids now dress like grunge, like with flannel shirts tied around their waist and stuff like that. And it's but it but it doesn't it's not like disco clothing was 20 years later just was funny. It's still funny. It's silly, funny looking clothes for the most part. And the grunge stuff now is just kind of like, okay, whatever. But it's not like, haha, look at that flannel shirt. It's just kind of like, somebody's
Yeah.
brooding. And I guess I just kind of like I mean, I like a good sad song and everything, but I think I like the kind of overall, like, I think you can have a song, like David Coverdale doing Blind Man. It's like such a passionate, like heartfelt, saddish song, but Coverdale the man was always about fun and rock and just having a good time. And I think with disco it was always just fun and having, there weren't a lot of sad disco songs because you got to dance to it. And with grunge it was not just the music that was sad, which I like a good like emotional song, but it was their whole persona beyond that was just they constantly keeping that up of the brooding and everything. And I think that's what while I was never as anti-grunge as you were, I was certainly was not a R. I was certainly not a fan, and I'm not necessarily a fan now. There's a few things that I enjoy from that era, but yeah, I think the overall just kind of like joylessness of it was what really didn't resonate with me at the time.
Well,
Even being a brooding teenager, I was like, that's enough is enough. Let's go. You're in your 20s, pick it up.
Well, I mean, how much of that too was like, if you think about it now in retrospect, and I haven't done any reading about this because why the hell would I read a grunge biography?
Why would you read about the music you hate so much?
The history of grunge or whatever. But I mean, how much of that was packaged and marketed and like in a persona? I mean, do you think that the Smashing Pumpkins went around all the time and they were like fucking depressed? I mean, give me a break, I mean,
maybe. Do you remember the famous picture of Billy Corgan on the roller coaster? You've seen that, right?
Yeah,
It's like he's on a roller coaster, like a silly looking roller coaster too, and he's just like brooding. He's like,
but I mean these musicians, disco, grunge, whatever, they had their time span of being successful, and with success comes, press, some money. I'm not saying that it's lasting or that they were rich or anything. But there was some success associated with that. So I mean, it's just like who isn't happy about being successful? But I mean, like, let's be honest, right? After some of those,
I think there is like definitely a point in success where you start to be unhappy about it, or you can be unhappy about it. They were unhappy from the beginning till the end,
But I mean, it's just like when the Trailblazers or the originals, whatever, built that that base for it, then of course you had the the marketing departments of all these places go, all right, now we need like about 20 more of these that we can just crank out. So there you go. I mean, it's, how much of that image was manufactured. I mean, were these people really depressed all the time? I mean, they couldn't have been,
Well, I mean, 4 of the big 5 killed themselves. So I think there was something to it. I mean, you got what, Lane Staley, Scott Weiland, Chris Cornell, and Kurt Cobain. All Eddie Vedder's the only one still going strong of what I would consider like the big 5 grunge guys.
Well, all right, I'm not saying
I think there was probably something to it.
But not saying they didn't have problems, but I mean, I'm not saying that they were like, I was saying the image of that was because, just the same way that like hair metal and, disco were marketed as like being really, upbeat and fun lifestyle. I mean, you don't think that like the 80s hair rockers were happy all the time. I mean, if you read any of the biographies about them, they talked about how they were like struggling and living hand to mouth and like sleeping on like, in doorways and stuff before they were even successful. And then you're just like, oh, well, they always looked like they were like, popping champagne and blowing up confetti and everything. It's like, it's all an image,
I guess that's, it's the difference between taking stage and making a conscious effort to put on a good happy show versus a brooding show. You look like somebody, I think probably the quintessential examples like David Lee Roth, like the ultimate showman, like his life, I'm sure has been great, but it can't be that great. I mean, the guy is always just like, he's a natural showman, and he's just always great. Hey, pointing at people, and just like having the time of his life. And that's what you got to do when you're putting on a show. You got to put on a show. But anyway, we got to put on a show, and that means getting to the next track, which we'll get to any day now.
We took a long detour there,
a long detour through grunge. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yes, apologize especially to me, because I don't want to be there.
I took you to a place you didn't want to be. All right, so next up is Any Day Now, written by B. Hilliard and Burt Bacharach. What does the B in Hilliard stand for? Let me see. I'll give this guy his proper due. Bob Hilliard, an American lyricist. And he passed away in 1971, so this is an oldie. And Burt Bacharach, of course, who's still going strong, born in 1928. Jeez, the guy's still going strong. He's what, 91, 92?
Yikes.
Jeez. Okay, this track is Any Day Now. And this is closing out the first side of this album. Another sad song. And this is comparatively actually is a sad song. Like, I love how this is how they would do a sad song in disco. This is how you do a bass line in a sad song. Really,
still super funky.
He's like, hey, I'm only going at it 90% as strong as I normally did. I'm trying to really break it down a notch. Like, cause I could see this same chord progression and vocals and everything being done in I'd have to go back and listen to the Bacharach version. I'm sure it's. Oh, that's what you call it?
What?
That little thing they just threw in there was. Listen.
What, the strings?
Yeah. The classic oldie song. Gonna drive me crazy because I can't think of it with this song playing. I know I shouldn't want to keep you if you don't want to stay until you're gone from me forever. I'll be holding on for dear life. I'm sure all of our listeners are yelling at their devices now because they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Or they're yelling because they're just like, oh, it's a disco episode. Well, when we've done disco-ish type of songs, how much feedback have you gotten from like listeners about not liking disco?
Not that much.
I mean, I feel like the listeners of the show are pretty open-minded to a lot of different types of music. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to.
Purple podcast listener is very sophisticated, and even when a lot of times, honestly, even when it's music that they really don't like, they are
tolerant.
Yeah, an understanding of that we might like things that they don't like, and they, even though they strongly disagree, they have respect.
Yeah, but the whole thing about the Deep Purple family and Deep Purple is like how diverse all these musicians are.
Right.
Ooh.
It was like it's like he needed a bathroom break, so he was like,
I was gonna say,
turn up the reverb. I'm gonna keep singing from across the room.
Yeah, I'm going to pee. Just keep recording me. Now he's in the bathroom, so the guitar player's taking a solo.
And then you'll hear that reverb start getting closer and closer.
Almost sounds like a late 70s George Benson solo.
Okay, so that organ solo that they threw in there just off
Nice.
the top was, you know, you know what I'm talking about, or am I just an idiot over here?
I can't believe you did that for that long, first of all.
Long solo. I only did the first part.
But you remembered it.
It's like, well, it's like, why I'm drawing a blank. Like I've heard the song 10 million times, as you have. All I could think of is House of the Rising Sun, but that's not it. That's more of a sad organ solo.
No, I don't know.
Everyone's yelling at me right now. They're yelling at you even more because at least I know it's something.
I can't
I could think of the friggin' words for 1 second, I'd be fine, but it's like, all right. It's just hard with all this disco reverberating around in my brain. But speaking of this song, which was kind of ruined for me because all I could think of, couldn't get out of my head, was that song. And I think I want to say that song's even like a song that like Don Airey has quoted as being like one of his favorite organ classic, like organ solos.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank still.
All right. Well, what do you think of
well, I was gonna give it a 3, but I'm gonna elevate it to a 3.5 because I enjoyed the end guitar solo a lot. That's about it. I mean, this is another, like we were saying about the first couple of songs, is they're just kind of I guess indistinguishable from just any other disco songs, but it doesn't mean they're bad. But I don't think there was anything that stood out too much about this. But I mean, like I said, that guitar solo on the way out was pretty enjoyable. So in addition to kind of bebop and maybe stand up and take notice a little bit. So
all right,
here we go.
I will also give this one a 3.5. I think it's it's a good solid bebopping song. And again, the production on all of this, I think, sounds years ahead of where it should. Just very very advanced, very well recorded. Yeah. I'm just skimming through organ songs to see if I can.
This is driving you nuts.
It's gonna drive me crazy, and it's like it's so obvious too that's what's really making me crazy. But since I just sang the entire first part of the solo like note for note, and I can't think of the name of the song. Runaway. Is it Runaway? Yeah. Yeah, run, my little runaway, run away. That's the song by Del Shannon.
Like you said, I got too much disco stuck in my head right now. We have to listen to it after the show.
Okay. I feel better now. Runaway. Yes, it's got to be Runaway. It's a classic solo. You had to have heard it like 1,000 times. If I play it for you after this episode, you're gonna be like, oh, of course that. But they kept throwing that in there. Anyway, okay. Oof. Now with a clean mind, we can flip over this album, go to side 2, and this is a long one. This is the Glimmer Twins medley, of course, referring to the Glimmer Twins being Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. So here we go. We're going to hear a Rolling Stones disco medley featuring Glenn Hughes. So here we go. Oh, that's not what I was expecting. John sending me pictures of text to make me laugh.
I think these are really interesting versions of these songs, and actually really well done with Glenn singing them.
This Roland vocoder coming in.
Vocoder, Mr. Vocoder.
I would like to know the behind the scenes for like why he wanted his name taken off of this, because it's like it's a big deal.
Could have been a financial thing. You know, financial contracts.
Yeah,
like,
if they had some sort of something in the contract and he's just like, well, you know what, you're not going to be able to use my name to sell this album then. Screw you.
Right, right.
But that HMV had the right idea. Big sticker on the front. Glenn Hughes. I wonder if it's like a handwritten sticker or if they actually send them separately. Like, hey, put these on the cover of the album. We told them we wouldn't credit them on the album cover, so once they take the plastic off, it's gone. When you think of this as like when you think of a medley, you think of shortening up the songs, but this is 16.5 minutes long for 4 songs. That's about 4 minutes a piece. I mean, it's basically almost full versions of the songs, I would assume.
Glenn Hughes is like, yeah, don't put my name on this. Nobody's even going to know who that is singing.
They'll never know.
Wah, wah.
No one would be able to pick up on the fact that this is Glenn Hughes singing. Totally, very, very indistinct vocalist. Yeah. Sounds like just about everybody else. He's doing like all of his classic Glenn Hughes, like even if you were unsure about it, which I don't know. If you're unsure about who this is, then you have never heard Glenn Hughes before, but
yeah,
he's throwing in all of his Glenn Hughes-isms.
Hughes-isms.
It's funny because like even like we've listened to all those JLT commercials, and even knowing JLT and hearing so much of his music, he's able to just kind of blend. He has a voice that can kind of sound like anything.
Yeah.
As good a voice as it is, it's not super distinctive.
No, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Like if it was, we could listen to the whole album of JLT doing this, and then we'd find out at the end and be like, "What? That was him?" I have to listen again, but there's no chance of that happening with Mr. Hughes. Ooh. Transitioning into the second song here. So this is Lady Jane. I wonder if the guys in Rolling Stones ever heard this.
The bass is just like insane. The way that it's mixed on this.
It's crazy. I love it.
But I mean, these songs really translate well to this genre.
Better than you would think.
Yeah.
There's a chain of barbershops around here called Lady Jane's Cuts for Men. Do they have those by you?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
A regional thing. But it's like I don't know the best way to describe it. It's kind of like almost like Hooters for haircuts. But not quite as like over the top, but it's like ladies with sports jerseys and they're playing sports on, and the ladies are all like, you know, they have, you know, their hair is all done up with, you know, like over the top makeup and stuff. So it's kind of like that same like idea, like we're men, we don't get haircuts unless there's sports playing, and the chicks are wearing sports jerseys. And
we have that around. We have that around here at Sports Clips.
Yeah, it's like for men that are too insecure to get a haircut without. We gotta put something manly in there. I can't just be getting a haircut. I'm losing man cred by the minute.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it says here on their website, wicked awesome. That's more of a your neck of the woods type of expression.
Right? No, it's Marie.
Marie's haircuts for men.
Yeah, it's like the one over here is like, you know, they got the TVs up all over the wall, the local sports teams logos on the thing, and they're just like Sports Clips, where it's great to be a guy. You know, and the girls are wearing all like the, you know, the what do you call it? They make them wear the referee jerseys.
That's right. Yeah. I think we have those around here. I can't remember if we have those here, if we have them, if I'm used to them from when I lived there, but. There'll be some people out there that just had this album and just like, this was their go-to album. They put this on a Friday night getting ready to go out into the discotheque.
Yep. The Getting Ready to Go Out album.
Applying some mousse or hairspray or whatever they listening to the sweet strains of Jeff Skunk Baxter. I mean, also, it's probably for the best that Glenn Hughes didn't go down the disco route. That might not have played into some of his weaknesses at the time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Not that he had any trouble really getting his hands on any of that stuff, but being even more surrounded by that kind of, whatever you want to call it, that kind of atmosphere. Whoa.
Yeah, those strings were getting really aggressive there.
Yeah. Almost sounded like vacuum cleaners. Sound like real strings though. Like I wonder what.
I think they must have been. I really love this this end jam here to this part of the medley.
You mean this middle jam?
Yeah, mid jam.
The bridge the gap between the next two songs. Ooh. A little liquidy sounding.
The one constant is that freaking bass line.
Yeah, ooh, bringing in like a little sitar sounding.
Yeah, you know it's painted black.
Like, Neil, we just need to slap and pop octaves for 16 minutes. Here's the key. Got it. Mission accepted. This was a big thing back then too, like a fifth of Beethoven and stuff like that, like doing like discoed up versions of classics. So
yeah,
see why they would have gone down this path. Doing an instrumental portion of this?
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Is the flexitone gonna come out? That would just be the only thing they're missing. It's the only trick. Makes you realize how great a song this is. I kind of want to just listen to the original now. Maybe they're just going to bring Glenn in back at the end for the final track. I don't know.
Yeah, I forget if he was on this as a vocalist at all, or if they just kind of did this as an instrumental.
It's getting a little late in the game to bring him in at this point.
True.
Could have been one of the things they just never finish up the song, and they're like, wow, just four on the floor, ship it. Just leaving the shakers all by themselves here.
Yeah, I do think it was a non-vocal part.
Really could have used it right
Don't
there.
be adding things.
You guys, if you need me for consulting.
Well, this is under my thumb.
That's kind of cool how they jazzed this one up. Left the whole line. The change has come. She's under my thumb. Under my thumb. She's under my thumb. I think Glenn Hughes had in his contract he needed a few breaks during the track. It's almost like it really sounds like they just rolled the tape.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll jump in where I need to. It's like he needed to go get a drink during the painted black part. Nice. The way she does just what she's told down to me. The change has come. She's under my This is almost starting to kind of feel like one of those Weird Al polka medleys.
Yeah, except without the accordion.
I think he has one that's all Rolling Stones songs, actually.
I think he might, yeah.
But he crams in like probably 12 or 13 songs in 3 or 4 minutes versus this.
Because he does about like 30 seconds of each song. That's definitely real strings.
Yeah, they didn't have the technology to do, but I'm looking and I don't see any credits for the strings. Grab the. Oh. Oh yeah, that was the guy who wrote the Outer Limits song, did the arrangements. It says horns and strings arrangements by Al and Dominic Frontier.
Yeah. Did a little whoop in there.
The classic Hughes. They think a bunch of people,
little worked up.
They think a bunch of people in the back of this, including like a bunch of restaurants, it sounds like, and then they say Santa Monica Hospital. I wonder what happens during the recording.
Somebody slipped and their face fell into a pile of cocaine.
That probably happened a few times. So, and then they thank all the people who will probably misunderstand this. And then it says, all guitar solos played by Jeff Baxter, including the one at the end of There Goes My Baby that sounds like a fiddle.
It's really specific.
Yes. Oh, man. Glimmer Twins medley. What do you think of that one, Johnny?
Well, I'll tell you, like, I have a distinct memory of this. I don't know when I had this on repeat, but I did for a while because I did remember all that stuff, including that crazy, like, breakdown at the end of, what was it, Sweet Lady Jane?
I think it was, yeah, in between the two.
Yeah. So I'm giving it a 4.5.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked it. I mean, everybody knows that I'm not a huge Rolling Stones fan, but I mean, I know those songs, and I don't know, I just think they're done really well, and I like the Hughesy version of them. And I mean, it's just got a lot of great stuff in it. It's like you said, it's one of those, like, you know, where that's one of those, like, you could picture it being a getting ready to go out type of song. It's like a hype type song. Or, you know, you're just driving down the road and you're like, yeah, I got 15 minutes to get to this place and I want to be pumped up. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a great, I mean, you could take like, be like, oh yeah, the William Shatner version of that song blows. You know, I wouldn't say that about this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could be like, hey, like, you know, insert person's name here version of that song really stinks, you know, and it's like, you know, this could be very tempting to be like, oh, Glenn Hughes doing disco versions of Rolling Stone songs. But
yeah,
no, it works as far as I am concerned. So there you go.
All right.
Mic drop.
Well, I'm sorry to say I would give this one a 3. It was enjoyable, but I feel like I thought it was weird that they just left out any vocals for Paint It Black. And I mean, I thought it was overall like really well done, and it kept moving pretty well, but the musically it was really good. It seemed like the vocal parts on that were an afterthought, and it would have been kind of to see a little more consistency with where the vocals were placed and stuff, I think would have elevated it up a bit for me, but I don't have the same familiarity with it as you do. So that may be slightly clouding my judgment, but that's where I'm standing on the final track of that was a long one, 16 and a half minutes medley. Good way to round up the album. So there you have it. 4 on the floor. And John, it's not very often that we have tracks this or albums this short, but where does this 4-track album stack up against the competition?
Let's see. Here we go. 4 on the floor. So say hang on, just get my bearings here. Oh. Nope. Hold, please.
He's trying. Please hold.
Please hold. I will get to you in the order of importance of your
spreadsheet. Used to be a lot easier to sort when it was a lot shorter. And if you want access to the spreadsheet, just become a patron and then shoot me an email and let me know that you want to be added to the spreadsheet.
All right, so a 7.38 with a little bit of a variance, of course, in my favor, probably because I rated that last song so highly. Yeah, that looks like it falls into the middle, kind of the lower middle of our favorites, in company with John Lord Saraband, being the same exact rating, and slightly higher Hughes Thrall,
very slightly,
like 0.01 like above it. So it's I always find it interesting when like some of these albums like that like predominantly feature like a musician like fall like kind of right next to each other. It's just like, hey, look, a Hughes like heavy album next to another Hughes heavy album.
It happens a lot. Like it's kind of interesting to see it as the spreadsheet grows and develops, that you see it sandwiched in between two things that it's sort of related to. I mean, it could just be partially coincidental, but
well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the number of like prominent musicians that have been in like Deep Purple proper, I mean, are not that much. So I mean, obviously the likelihood that like, a Hughes project is going to be like right next to a Hughes project is pretty good, but it's like it's without even knowing, it's just kind of I think it's a little, or knowing ahead of time, I think it's kind of telling as to like what our tastes are, even though it's like, totally random or whatever. It's like, it was that one time there was like a Coverdale album next to like 2 other Coverdale projects, and
sure,
I just always think that it's cool when that happens, because it's just kind of like it just kind of almost reinforces to me that like, our tastes are naturally going where we know that they're going.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And interestingly, you ranked this higher than Play Me Out, and I ranked Play Me Out higher than this. Almost, the numbers are almost inverse of each other. So I gave Play Me Out a 3.89. You gave this a 3.88. I gave this a 3.5, and you gave Play Me Out a 3.44. So we almost like kind of flip-flopped our Play Me Out versus this, and I got some interesting notes on that a little bit later. So that is 4 on the floor. And before we wrap it up, of course, we have to thank our foundation level patrons coming in at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier. We have Peter Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, Stuart McCord, and Flight of the Rat Bat Blue Light. And at the $1 made up name tier, we have the Freaky Leaky Mausoleum, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, JJ Stenard, Hank the Tank, Private Eyes, and our newest patron, of course, heyo, Ashen Lionel. Thank you so much for your support for the Deep Purple podcast. So Simon Robinson says that this was passed along to him by a friend, as we talked to earlier. He didn't know what to make of it, and then discovered it was Glenn Hughes doing disco tunes. And much like you, John, he says he thinks he prefers this album to Play Me Out. So there you go. So you and Simon Robinson, 2 wise minds of the Deep Purple family, agreeing on that one.
Yes.
I think I'm going to still have to go with Play Me Out personally. So, so yeah, if you want more information on this, you can check out, I mean, there's really only a couple of spots to check out: the Discogs link, and then the liner notes by Simon Robinson are pretty much where we got all the information for this episode, because there's really not a ton out there. It's a pretty obscure album that would probably be even more obscure if it hadn't been combined with Play Me Out on that compilation. All right, John. Well, that's that. With that, I will bid you adieu until next week, where we get together to tackle another topic, Deep Purple related. But what will it be, folks? Well, I don't know because I can't remember. So you'll have to tune in to find out. Oh, actually, I do know, but yeah. Okay, I remember.
Only you know. Only
I remember, but I'm not talking. So we'll see you next week, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.